You sent them 112 leads, and they still decided to leave?
Your Honor, they were trashed!
To be honest, I thought more leads was enough.
You sent 112 leads, but tracked none of them?
Where's the appointments, Liam?
This is ridiculous.
He didn't even track CPL.
Your Honor, my client wants to leave his agency.
Your Honor, don't blame him. He didn't know about the 4 metrics.
In this video, I'll walk you through the 4 metrics you need to track in your agency to literally predict when a client will churn, fix the problem before they actually leave, and make more recurring revenue in your agency. We'll be going over what these 4 numbers are, how to actually apply this to your specific situation, and lastly, which is the most important part to be honest, how to use this to literally predict your client churn and make more money in your agency. So first things first, let's go over the 4 KPIs. Now, this is slightly different to the general KPIs I've talked about before in the channel, where we're talking about different things like CAC and churn. Because in this case, these 4 metrics I'm talking about are on a client by client basis. So what this basically means is that you're tracking these numbers individually for every single client. Now, there is a world where you're also using these numbers to get averages, just to get your overall performance. However, in this video, and the whole method I'm going to talk about later on, is applied to tracking your results on an individual client by client basis so you can get a better understanding of their specific performance. And in this video, I'm using the example specifically for lead gen agencies. These 4 magic numbers are CPR, which is cost per lead, CPA, which is cost per appointment, lead to appointment, and last but not least, show up rate. Now, I know you probably heard these numbers before, and once again, in all honesty, they're not anything crazy, but just to make everything super simple, because KPIs and metrics mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, I'm just going to quickly define them. So in my case, CPL is cost per lead. All this is your total marketing cost divided by the total number of acquired leads. So for example, if you spend £100 on ads and you got 10 leads, your cost per lead would be £10. Fairly simple. Now, this is a complete side note, but I'd actually recommend having 2 different CPLs, one considering just ad spend, and then one actually taking in your agency's retainer, right? Because technically that is still part of the marketing cost. But that's just more advanced stuff. Some people like to do it, some people don't. If you at least have a general cost per lead, that's what matters. Second thing is CPA, which is cost per appointment. Once again, fairly similar to cost per lead. All we're doing here is dividing your total marketing cost divided by the total number of appointments. So once again, if I spend $100 on ads and I get 1 appointment, my cost per appointment is $100. Fairly simple. And once again here, you can take into account just ad spend, but some people also like to take into account the retainer that they're actually charging clients because that's part of marketing cost. The third number we have is lead to appointment. Now, lead to appointment is just basically the percentage of leads that actually convert into appointment. In order to calculate this, all you have to do is divide the number of appointments by the number of leads and times by 100. So once again, let's go to some quick maths examples. If you book 5 appointments, but you got 50 leads, then your lead to appointment ratio would be 10%. And last but not least, we have show up rate, which is just basically the percentage of appointments which showed up or didn't cancel. So in this case, all you need to do is divide the number of shown appointments divided by the number of total appointments. I'm not going to go through the example of that one. So these are 4 metrics, and this is really nothing complicated, guys, but 2 quick warnings about this. First things first, remember, we're tracking these individually on a client by client basis. We want to get an idea of how each individual client is performing. And the second one I'm going to give you is that these numbers right here don't live independently of each other. So when you're making this analysis, which we're going to talk about in the third part of this video, you shouldn't be looking at these numbers individually, but looking at them as a whole. And we're going to go over this later, right? But just to give you a quick idea, if one of these numbers improves, but the rest of them don't improve, that's not necessarily a win. So when you're tracking the performance of these numbers, it's always important to just have a quick look at how the other ones are behaving, because these numbers are not independent of each other. And if you do treat them independently without taking into account the other numbers, then you're very likely to be misguided. So now that you have an understanding of these 4 metrics that you track, you're already ahead of other people, because most agency owners are just tracking, for example, the number of leads. And this isn't enough, because remember, we want to use this information down the line to actually predict who's going to churn, when they're going to churn, and who needs a bit more of our attention to prevent them from churning in the first place. But an interesting thing, guys, and we're now moving to the second part of this video, is that every agency is different. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of agencies encounter the same problems. If they didn't, we wouldn't be in business because every single person would be a new entire business. However, I still need to kind of make this differentiation because each agency that we've seen anyways has a different type of service delivery or different types of client wants. Now, once again, you can group a lot of these together, but I did want to add this section in the video to give you a chance to basically apply this to yourself, regardless of whatever circumstances you're actually going through. Let's say you have a service delivery that focuses on just a lead. You have to change these different metrics or amend different metrics. Or let's say you have a service delivery where your clients literally only care about the appointments and having qualified appointments. You need to change these metrics. So this one I'm going to show you now. So in this case right now, we have our 4 general metrics, right? But I want to show you how you can add different metrics or even potentially take them away depending on your specific service delivery and how your agency actually works. Now, the easiest way to do this, guys, is just have a think about this for a second. I want you to think about the last bad thing a client said to you on an exit interview before they were actually leaving. And guys, if you're not having exit interviews and you don't know what that is, you seriously need to consider implementing exit interviews, which are basically just imagine like an onboarding call, but it's an offboarding call right before a client leaves. On that call, you basically want to get clear understanding as to why they're actually leaving, the specific reason, the true reason. Don't take any BS they actually give you. Get to the real reason to why they're leaving you. And in this case, right, well, you're going to use this information and these calls to basically identify what these pain points are that are causing people to leave. So if it's any of the examples where they don't have enough leads or they're getting too few appointments or appointments didn't show up, this is fine. We're already covering these kind of situations in our 4 original metrics. However, if you have clients that are complaining that leads are unqualified or appointments were impossible to close or there's no ROI in actually working with you guys, then this is where you need to have a think about adding different metrics to your 4 key metrics, because we need to get an understanding of what clients care about, and most importantly, we need to be able to track what clients actually care about. So have a think about this. Use a whiteboard like the one I've got over here if you want to, or even the one I'm using right now, which is Figma, and basically just write down every single complaint that you've had from a client and just take a step back. Don't have any ego associated with this. You're trying to identify what are the things that clients really care about and what are the things that are actually in my control that I can do to improve their experience and ultimately get them better results. So for example, guys, if you're going over your exit call recordings and you're noticing that a lot of people are saying they have a lack of ROI, then you want to actually track the average ROI for each client, because this can be an indicator of churn. If someone's not getting ROI, they're a lot more likely to leave you, right? Another example is, let's say you keep on getting complaints that people are leaving because you're getting them leads, but those leads are not qualified. Let me just fix that one. Then you need to track the percentage of qualified leads as a metric in your 4 key metrics. So you basically want to go through this exercise, go through the exit interviews or even just comments that clients have said to you. And then based on that, you need to determine what metrics you actually want to track in this case. Now, one thing that's important to kind of mention here is that you'll notice that all of these metrics are relative. They're not fixed. And I'm not sure if fixed is the right word, but all of these metrics right here have the ability to be compared to each other regardless of the quantity, right? So for example, cost per lead, I can have an understanding of our client is performing in terms of cost per lead, regardless of whether they're getting 100 leads or 10 leads, because it's a relative cost. We're comparing it to ad spend. I wouldn't recommend having any fixed metrics in here. And once again, I don't know if the right word is fixed, right? But I don't recommend having something like number of leads or number of appointments, because this may vary. Let's say you have a company that's willing to spend more on ads, they're going to get more appointments, and just because they're spending more money on ads and getting more leads doesn't mean that cost per lead is still high. So I always recommend to have these kind of relative metrics, and so have a think about this when you're adding these numbers. Like for example, in terms of qualified leads, I wouldn't just enter number of qualified leads as a metric. I'll put percentage of leads that are qualified as the metric, so we're making it relative to the number of leads and allowing us to compare it regardless of the size of leads that are actually bringing in. Or same thing for ROI. I wouldn't track the actual ROI in terms of dollars. I'll track the percentage of ROI in regards to their ad spend or the retainer they're actually paying you, so you get a much better understanding of how you can compare it between different companies regardless of how much they're paying you, regardless of ad spend. It's relative, if that makes sense. But cool, guys, so far we've gone over what are the 4 metrics that you need to track in your agency to predict churn. Then we went over how you can spice this up a bit more so you can actually include your own metrics in this 4 key list depending on what your clients specifically care about and the feedback you've gotten of why they're leaving. Now is probably the most exciting part, where we're going to talk about how you can use these 4 numbers right here to literally predict when a client will churn. And guys, this is something that's relatively simple. Like everything I talked about in this video is so simple, but from all the agencies that we've audited, no one is doing this until they actually start working with us. And guys, it's one of those gems that just really, really goes a long way. So if you made it this far, shout out to you, because you're about to cover one of those secrets that you're never going to regret learning. So what we have to do here to literally predict client churn is very simple, guys. All you need to do is on a weekly basis, you're going to go client by client and compare the current performance for these metrics that you've outlined in the previous step compared to what targets you are actually aiming for, or let's say your average client actually gets. So for example, for different things like CPL, CPA, or lead to appointment ratios, you want to basically set a target. And then you want to compare each client's performance to that individual target to get an understanding of how that account is actually performing. So I'll give you two examples to really drive this in, guys. So in this example, we're using client A, which is a home improvement company. Once again, doesn't matter. They have a CPO of $19, which let's say your target is 30, that's fine. But one thing you notice when you're comparing these results is that their lead conversion rate is 8%, which is a lot lower than this hypothetical target of 20%. Show up rate is fine. This basically allows you to have a look at this account and be like, okay, something may not be right. What's going on? It turns out because they have a lead conversion rate, and once again, you're going to have to change this depending on your specific situation. But in this case, there's a follow-up delay. So the client sales rep was on leave, so the leads were contacted for 2 to 3 days. But this basically allows you to immediately red flag clients and get an understanding of, okay, this guy is performing not well. Let's figure out why this specific client isn't performing that well in one of our key metrics. And then from this, you can obviously have action items such as messaging the client, offering to set up, I don't know, automated follow-ups or wherever it is, and help the clients get this number back up. And because we're doing this on a week by week basis, we are getting a really, really good understanding of who's performing really well on a weekly basis, who's performing all right and might need potential assistance, and then who's performing bad, which is basically people that are at risk of churn. So that's the first example. Let me show you another example for another client. Let's say we have client B in this case, and he's a local med spa. In this case, CPL is normal, CPA is super, super high, conversion rate is fine, but the show-up rate is also very low. This indicates two different things: that the appointments are that we're not getting enough appointments booked, and that our show-up rate is very low. So in this case, what do we need to do? Depending obviously your service delivery, but in this case, we are setting up the reminders on go high level to making sure the appointment automations are actually connected. And in this case, we're reactivating a workflow, trying to improve the cost per appointment and improving our show up rate using different automation. But once again, guys, don't worry much about the diagnosis, about the action, because obviously that's going to change depending on what specifically you're doing and how you handle your service delivery. I also want to point out the fact that we're using these different metrics, comparing them to the targets for the client's performance, and get an understanding of how that client is actually performing. And from that, we can then make decisions as to, okay, who do we need to prioritize next week? Who are these clients that we need to give a bit more attention to make sure that they get the results that they actually deserve? And the reason they're actually paying you after all is to get these results. And once again, this is why it's important, when I went all the way back here, to make these metrics things that your clients actually care about. These 4 metrics here are just a standard, right? Very basic stuff. But I would recommend, if you notice your clients care about a very specific thing, which is, for example, lead gen is fairly simple, right? It could be percentage of qualified or the ROI. Make sure you actually track that, because you'll get a much better understanding of how your client is performing. And hopefully, when you notice their performance starting to go down, you can jump on that straight away. And the next week, for example, you can launch new ads, or I don't know, launch an email campaign, depending on what you're actually doing. One thing that's very important here, guys, is whenever you implement these changes, don't keep it quiet. Communicate with your clients. There's no point in, identifying an issue before it actually becomes a problem and then keeping it to yourself, trying to fix that behind the scenes. Don't do that. Communicate that with your clients. Share with them that you've noticed, for example, that their CPA has gone up, but next week you're going to do X, Y, Z to actually improve it. And you can even make this an SOP or an internal process for you guys, where every single week you're having a performance review for each individual client. And then if you spot any red flags, you're going to go ahead and actually message that client with different updates, what you're going to do next week to actually improve it. And once again, guys, I know I'm going to keep repeating myself, but this is nothing revolutionary. Like, I'm not showing you crazy automation that's going to change the way your agency works. This is fairly simple stuff. And to be honest, it's something you should already be doing, but not enough people are doing. Because once again, all we're doing here is identifying key metrics that really rely on our delivery and metrics that clients really care about, tracking them on a weekly basis, comparing them to our targets, and then if any of them slip our target, basically fixing the issue to make sure that the client performance is good and preventing someone from churning out. And once again, the way this kind of prevents a client from churning is, let's say that you notice the results are going down in week 1. Rather than waiting until the client actually comes to you and says, hey, our CPA has been skyrocketed high for the past month and you haven't done anything about it. From week 1, as soon as the problem arises, you spot the problem, you implement the changes in ad account, and you communicate that problem with your client. So they know that you actually have their lead gen in control because you know exactly what's going on and you know exactly what you need to do to actually improve it. So that trust that your client has for you is going to skyrocket high. And that's pretty much how you can prevent your churn, guys, because you'll have an understanding of who's performed well, who's not doing so good. And then obviously you can allocate resources to those people that are not doing so good. So you can basically give them better experience and give them better results. Now, this is a lot easier when you have something like a health score dashboard, which basically compiles data from different places and puts them together in one very, very nice dashboard, which automatically compares that data to what you already have and then gives you a health score for each client, letting you know who's at risk, who's not at risk, who needs more attention, without you having to open Facebook Ad Manager, go at level, or whatever it is that you're using individually, client by client. Because as you can imagine, when you have 5 clients, it's fine. But when you have 15, 20, 30, 50 clients, it gets really, really messy and can take a lot of time. So if you're at that point, I recommend setting up a health score dashboard where you can basically compile this data all in one place and allow you to get a really, really clear identification of exactly how each client is performing and a clear indication of their health score. So if anyone did perform that health score, you'll get alerted straight away. But if you want more information about that, you can check out this video where I literally broke down exactly how you can set up health score in your agency. I personally think is the most important metric to track in your agency, and obviously it is a compilation of different metrics, so I wouldn't really call it one metric, but it's one of those things that once you track, you'll literally have a superpower over your competitors because you're going to be able to predict your client performance and basically prevent people from leaving, because as soon as a problem starts, you're going to jump on it, be proactive rather than being pre-active like your competitors and waiting until your clients actually come to you. Now, I do have a video going over how you can do it yourself, but if you want us to actually set this up for you, check out the link in the description somewhere or in the comments, and you can apply for a free churn call where we'll find out what your actual churn rate is, give you 3 ways to actually improve it, and give you a rundown of how our clients are using this health score dashboard to take their agencies to the next level without worrying about when clients are going to churn, because once again, they're predicting it. All right, guys, that's pretty much it from me. I've talked quite a lot in this video, so I'll leave it here, a little bit of a rant towards the end. But if you did like this video and you found this valuable, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe, and comment. This is just so the YouTube algorithm actually recommends you more of my videos and different creators like me, which are providing you this value on a consistent basis. And I'm a bit selfish. If you do subscribe, obviously, I get to increase my subscriber count, reach out to more people, interact with more agency owners, and help more people improve their backend system. Last thing I'll say is don't stop your learning here. We have so many different resources on a YouTube channel of different ways you can improve the backend systems in your agency in order to make more money. So I really recommend checking those out. And if you have any questions about anything, just leave a comment below. I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. Apart from that, guys, that's it from me today. Catch you in the next one. Bye bye.